Welcome to the Coffee with Counsel podcast with your host, Grace St. Clair. In each episode, we'll have guests such as real estate brokers, financial advisors, accountants, and attorneys who will share their expertise and real stories of how people get in and out of a mess in a variety of circumstances. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, qualityestateplanning.com. Now, here's the host of Coffee with Counsel, Grace St. Clair.
Hi, everyone. So thank you for joining us. This is our first innovative podcast session. So I just wanted to welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. Really appreciate that. So who are we? It's Grace St. Clair here with St. Clair Law, Quality Estate Planning. And we're going to do this podcast monthly. So you'll be seeing a lot of interesting people that I know and people that help me with my business. So I'm so excited. Please join us again next time. So what do we do here at Quality Estate Planning? We help families and small businesses plan their estates so they'll avoid family arguments and unnecessary governmental interference. I always say, remember, it's never too early to plan your estate if you want to keep the state out of your business. And yeah, that's a double entendre. And I always say that because it means something. Your personal business is also worth protecting, but many people also own businesses. If you have a business, that means you have something unrelated to a W-2. And that's why I have Michelle here, because she's going to share with you some terrible messes some of our clients have gotten into and how we solve them. That's what we're doing here. So your business also has to be planned, or it can be going through probate. So what do I mean by business? Rental properties with family members. That is a business, right, Michelle? Actual service businesses like mine. We have people that do coaching. We have people that sell things, games on digital platforms. Also, I have a story about a guy who lost his family lost $600,000 because he had to plan it on one of those gaming sites that people visited, and he made money for that, but he didn't put it into his estate. So it was still in the cloud somewhere. People are going to his planet, but they're not making any money off of that. But also ad sales, computer websites, things like that. You name it. If it's not on your W-2, it's a business, and you still have to plan that. And who do we serve? So we serve, our process does work for everyone, but we serve families and small businesses mostly. We do like working with businesses, as most people forget how important these businesses are to their income, but also their estates. For instance, lawyers are the worst at this. A lot of us solo practitioners just die at our desk because no one ever thinks about themselves, like the cobbler and the shoes that they never fix. I can't remember what that old story is, but anyway, we're like that too.
Or orthodontist with the crooked teeth.
Right. We never help ourselves. We help everyone else. But who do we represent here in estate planning? We represent the grantors of the trust. That's the person that owns the property, makes the trust, or the trustee is the manager of the trust. Sometimes you might own the property in a different fashion with two people, but for the most part, that's the grantor. We represent the trustees, who are the persons who run the trust, manage the property, and manage the trust assets, but also the successor trustees. After someone passes, there's a successor trustee. And the personal representatives, or executors, as they're called in probate. We'll talk about that probably on another session, but the executor is someone who is named by the court to run that probate. So how did we get here where we are? Well, my story is kind of funny. I wanted to be a doctor, totally different from a lawyer. My family is all medically based. My grandfather was a doctor. My grandmother was a dietitian. My mother was a pharmacist, all women before women had careers. So of course I wanted to be a doctor. And as a smart kid, my dad always wanted me to take on that grandfatherly role and be a doctor. But I hated science. Science and me were not friends. It was more like a means to an end. So I had to take science in order to get through to med school. But when I when I went to USC, organic chemistry did me in. And, it was an unfortunate situation. But at that time, I was going to end up going to Mexico to medical school, I think. And that's when they only had one place besides America to go. Oh, my God, I'm aging myself. Sorry. Anyway. So I decided to get into the paralegal program at USC because I was kind of intrigued. I knew I was good at English and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I thought, why not I started getting straight A's. I'm like, wow, I'm really good at this. Not only that, but I actually like this, which was such a change for me. So when I left with my BA, I decided not to go to law school because I was so exhausted. As a science major, in order to switch to a less science oriented major, you have to take so many classes, and all my elective went to my new courses I had to take. So science were all of my electives, which means it wasn't as much fun. But anyway, after that, I was so tired of doing it. I thought I'm not going to go to law school right away. Plus, no one in my family was lawyers, so I had no idea about the practice of law. So I went to a few interviews and I just hated it. Going to law firms. There was always, in Beverly Hills, which is where all the jobs were at the time, there was always a screamer in the hallway, some partner that liked to scream and yell down the hall. And I thought, I can't work like this. I'm more of a business person, more of a calm individual. And I just thought, I don't think I can do this. So now I was like, oh dear, if this doesn't work for me, what am I going to do next? But I lucked into an interview with a company that wanted someone to manage their legal department. And I was like, oh, perfect. It's business, legal department, I'll go to that. So it was also in Beverly Hills, but it was raining that day. I was over 30 minutes late, which you ever hear. And my dad taught me many times, never be late to an interview. I knew I was history, and if anything, they were waiting for me. And of course, I did tell them I was running late, but I'm sure they were thinking, just leave earlier, right? But I was coming from Thousand Oaks, which is not an easy feat to get to Beverly Hills. But anyway, I walked right in. I thought, well, let's cut to the chase. My dad always taught me, if you're up against something, just get it out in the open. So I thought, okay, well, I'm 30 minutes late, so I'll try it. So I told them, I'm sorry I'm late, but let's just get this over with. Here's what I want. If you want something else or need another person, then I guess we should just not waste each other's time. And they were like, oh my God, we need someone just like you. And I sat there thinking to myself, I can't believe that worked. But it did. They were looking for someone just like that. And I was looking for something like what they had. So it was a great experience. After working there for a couple of years, I represented PSA, or not PSA, but we were doing a deal with PSA and the ESOP. That's an employee stock ownership program. PSA is now US Air, but back then it was PSA. And the other side was a very high-end lawyer at O'Malveny, and then another one he represented was Mid-State Airlines, and we did a deal with them. And so he stole me away and sent me off to work with him. He said, you need to come work with me and stuff. So when I went over to O'Malveny as a paralegal, all the paralegals, it's a very big firm, so it's very rule-centric. And he did give me a lot of leeway because that's what he wanted, but I was competing with the associates for work. So I realized, I'm going to have to go to law school if I want to do anything. At this time, I was so young, but of course that didn't bother me any. I still wanted to do like my daughter does now, which is, it's amazing how the fruit doesn't fall too far from the tree. But anyway, so I decided I had to go to law school. After finishing on the top of my class, I went back to O'Malveny, and my dad went through a difficult probate where they thought they had a trust and his mother had passed. And it took 2 years and $26,000 to get that small house in Ventura and a small bank account out of probate. So I mentioned that even though it doesn't seem like a ton of money, it's $2,000 a month for 2 years. So if you have an extra $2,000 laying around that you want to invest into court costs, go right ahead. But court is expensive. And with no one complaining, my dad's an only child and no issues. And it still took 2 years to get that. And that's when no one was going through probate. Now we have everyone going through probate because our courts in Los Angeles want everyone to have a voice just in case. The problem is that means a lot of people who should have lawyers don't. And so we have a lot of improper people, and they don't know what they're doing. Of course, probate is a scary process, even for my clients, but I know how to do it. So anyway, the rest is history. That's how I got into this business. And I felt like my dad was paying for something, or my family was paying for something that didn't work for them. So quality estate planning is not just the documents. It's about making sure you're getting what you think you have and what is going to work for you. And you don't want to fall apart without a resource. And that's what I am. So I make sure my plans don't fall apart, but the probates I get are from other people. But also I have people like Michelle who help me help my clients. I don't do everything, but I do know a lot about everything. So anyway, I want to introduce Michelle Rogers. Michelle and I met a while ago. I can't even remember now since we've known each other for so long.
Years now.
It's been several years, but we've had several messes. And what we're doing with this Coffee with Counsel is trying to share with you how people get into messes innocently, but then get into the bigger mess by trying to handle it themselves. And so, Michelle, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and who you serve and what you do?
Thank you, Grace. It's so fun hearing your origin story into law. I think we all kind of have a little bit of a personal way that we connected to our professions. But my name is Michelle Rogers. I'm the Senior Vice President of Mortgage Lending for Cross Country Mortgage, which means I handle all kinds of home loans. And in the case of you and I and how we work together is oftentimes people's biggest asset that they are leaving to their beneficiaries is real estate. It's the home that they owned and lived in their whole lives, or, other real estate that they acquired over their life. And so oftentimes there's a lot of things that have to be taken into consideration, like reassessment of property taxes. Do the beneficiaries, if there's more than one, do they all want to keep the property? Sometimes one of them wants to sell the property and take the cash, and the other one would like to keep the home for sentimental purposes or as an investment vehicle. So a lot of times we run into cases where real estate is involved as one of the primary assets, and we have to figure out how do we tap into the liquidity of that real estate to either make one of the parties whole that no longer wants to participate, or just keep it with the family that wants to keep it. So we've encountered a lot of circumstances like that where we've been able to collaborate to help Grace's client.
Right. Well, one of the things that Michelle didn't say is she's actually a mortgage broker, which makes a bigger difference. And I know everyone has a mortgage broker in their back pocket. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that we worked on together was one of my clients who was in a very difficult probate, 4 children. He lived in the house. Mom and dad left it. Actually, I think dad died second. Dad left it to all 4 children, 25% each, no issues at all. That's what he was probably expecting, but he had a reverse mortgage on the property. And my client was a business owner. And so he had an apartment building, and he goes, no, I've got a mortgage broker. She'll handle it. And I'm like, no, she won't be able to do it. And of course he disagreed with me. No, she helps me with all my loans. So I'm like, okay, fine. I finally decided, after he wouldn't listen to me, let him figure it out. So sure enough, he put the paperwork in right when they're getting ready to, almost at the very end. He's done all the work. You know how hard that is. You got to have your tax returns, your income statements, your, I don't know, give me a laundry list, your ID, everything.
Yeah.
And
all the things.
You know what it's like. You've all borrowed money. Anyway, so when he got to that point where they're getting ready to actually get it through underwriting, oh no, she can't do it. Of course not. It's in probate. I told him that. You cannot borrow money on a property in probate. Banks cannot do it. It's just not the business they're allowed to do. So you have to get a hard money loan or something like that. So we ended up taking care of that for him. But that was our first experience. And I knew from working with Michelle when she spoke at an event that I was at, that she explained these things. I kind of already knew, but she explained why these things don't work. So next time we had an issue, I called Michelle, and I call her all the time now because Michelle can get things done. I don't know how important that is to everyone else, but to me, when I recommend someone to my clients, I know they're going to get it done, because that otherwise my clients, can't deal with it. They're in a mess. So 3 of his siblings did not want him to buy that property out from the estate. And we were dealing with that for a long, long time. And the other, one of the spouses, even, this is another story about another day's story, but anyway, the spouses of one of the beneficiaries got involved and went on Zillow and insisted that that was the value of the property. Like, no, it's date of death value, and we have a loan against it. And as he's from Florida, he doesn't know California. I'm sure you guys have had this happen to you, where many people think they know something from another state. California is a unique animal, obviously, from what we're going through right now. But still, it's important to know the specific area that you're in. That's something really important.
Absolutely. I tell so many of my clients, all of my clients are very bright in whatever area they're an expert in, and business owners and professionals. And I always tell them, Googling is great, and it's, we're so lucky we have access to information. But unfortunately, when it comes to complex matters like those of estate planning and probate and those of mortgage lending, things can be taken out of context. So I have had many very bright, intelligent clients, create their own spreadsheets and do their own research and think that they fully understood what their property tax statement was going to be. And they didn't realize that Google had sent them, tax percentages from Ohio or something else. So I always tell people, it can be a little dangerous when you're dealing with complex matters such as these to think you can gather all the information on your own. You really need an expert advisor like Grace to guide you through these matters and understand when laws are appropriate, when they pertain to your particular case. So, one thing I have to say I love about Grace is she is so involved with her clients. She truly is the quarterback of the team. And so when I get a call from Grace, she fills me in on the situation of her client, where the challenges are, what the goals are of each individual, and then she leaves it up to me to kind of figure out how we can get them there. And we've had so much fun. It's really fun to be able to help people end up where they wanted to be, where everybody walks away happy, getting their needs met, and everyone is a winner. It's a win-win situation. Mm-hmm. So I would just say in these cases, Grace, that you bring to me, they are more complex. These are not cases that a standard bank can do.
Yeah, they don't want that business.
They don't. Ever since the 2007 Great Recession that was based in mortgage banking, unfortunately, so many laws changed after that. Mm-hmm. And so the big banks just want to do what are called qualified mortgages.
Right.
And those are mortgages that are extremely restrictive. You have to fit right into a very small credit box that they've designed. Right. And the average bear, especially in California, we have so many entrepreneurs, consultants, just people with a lot of different skills that they make, like you talked about, the guy with the planet, just all these different things, authors, podcasters, that they don't typically fit into those very narrow credit boxes. So,
let's talk for a little bit about our loan. So I actually asked Michelle to refinance our house, and everything went swimmingly. Like, my husband and I are both business owners, so we're like the double whammy mistake, right, to get involved in borrowing. But everything went, there was plenty of messes going on there just because of the reality of what we do for a living and how my husband gets paid, etc. And so, but everything, it worked out. We got refinanced and everything went well. But recently we went to get a HELOC because we're doing our kitchen, and my husband wanted a 6 months deal where he's 6 months, no payments at our credit union and stuff. So I wanted to stay married. So I said, okay, let's try it, And the same thing happened that every one of my clients deals with before I tell them, no, go to Michelle. And I was just kicking myself because I knew it was going to happen, but we were so close. We're always so close to the end, so close to the end. Mm-hmm. But ironically enough, the first thing the woman told us was she couldn't understand how my husband got paid. And that's part of it when you're self-employed. If you have to explain to someone how you get paid, that's a problem. And she could not remember every time we told her how he got paid. And real estate, when you're a real estate investor, you either syndicate there's a couple of ways, but he's a syndicator. He syndicates and he gets fees. He gets acquisition fees and he gets the end fee when he gets the sale. Two basically ways to get paid. There's only two, and she couldn't figure it out, but she understood W-2s. Like, that's what they do over there. And I thought, wow, if you were a W-2 employee, it would be simple to get a loan from her. But otherwise, we finally did get it closed, but it was a torturous experience. And I never want to go through that again.
Yeah.
So I couldn't wait to tell Michelle. I did it to myself because I know better. And Greg knew better too, because he had done the first refinance with you with no problem. But I wanted to stay married. That was more important than
I totally understand. Staying married is a high priority, Grace. So I'm glad you went with that order of priority.
It's cheaper to stay married.
Definitely. Yeah, there is, something our CEO has always said is the self-employed borrower is the most underserved borrower. Mm-hmm. And it's so unfortunate because they're so deserving. I feel like it should be the opposite. It's like an entrepreneur has shown that they can sustain themselves, that they can go out and generate business and revenue for themselves.
Yeah.
If anything.
But it does fluctuate, and that's the problem. Yeah.
But it does fluctuate. And as a business owner, we are always trying to make sure we are minimizing our income tax implications by making sure we're expensing all of our business related expenses.
Yeah.
And so, it does become a little more challenging for the bigger banks that tend to favor those W-2 employees to understand. So that is an area that my company specializes in, is the self-employed borrower.
Right. I know, that's so important. We have another person that we were working with who actually was referred to me by somebody else. And then when I called you, you went ahead and found out that you knew his lender.
Yeah.
That he had a prior loan that he needed to refinance. I didn't hear that he was unhappy with his lender. He just told me he needed funds. And that's how you got to call Michelle. And then after you went through his underwrite or his applications and whatever, you knew who that lender was.
Yeah.
So luckily, because you knew who that lender was, you were able to work with him.
Yeah.
Instead of just going, sorry, can't help you. That's the worst thing I ever want to hear. So far, no one said that to me.
Well, it matters who you know and your reputation in the local market business. So in that particular case, because I had such a strong relationship with his existing lender, I was able to talk to him and basically say, let's try to work out some extension terms for him rather than having him try to get a whole new loan all over again, which would have been expensive. And there was no guaranteed outcome either, because that was also a pretty sticky situation of a remodel gone, 2x over initial budget and whatnot.
Yeah, that can happen. And also his wife is basically self-employed.
Yep. So
he was like,
yeah, and he was also somebody who is all commission based.
Oh, okay.
Basically 1099 essentially. And also his business was one, I think he was in mergers and acquisitions, where he sometimes gets one big deal in 2 years and then he doesn't close the deal for a year.
Yeah.
So, I deal with a lot of people in M&A where, again, the banks are just like, you haven't been paid in 12 months.
Right.
But, they get these big deals that carry them until the next big one. So,
or you have an inquiry on your list, but then once every 24 months, that's every 2 years. Every 2 years, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah. So he had kind of an unusual source of income being in that business, and then his wife owned a retail store. So both self-employed with kind of tricky income situations.
Yeah.
One of the ones we worked on most recently together that I think is another good one is when I think of those two siblings that inherited their father's property.
Right. Two siblings inherited dad's property. He passed away, or he was ill for a while, and then he finally passed away, sadly, of his illness. And then they were trying to figure out what to do, and there was a balloon payment on that loan.
Yeah, which you don't hear about that very often, and sometimes I wonder, how did people get into these balloon payments? But
that's a mess that they naturally get into innocently without realizing. Maybe they're thinking in 24 months, I'll have a different situation or more money or something like that.
Yeah, and a balloon payment, for those of you that don't know, just basically means you're not paying the loan off slowly over time. It's like you only make interest payments, and then one day, bam, the whole balance is due at once. So it can be $200,000 that you have to suddenly pay all at once. So
Yeah.
that's a very scary place to be, knowing that you have a balloon payment that's coming up in 3 months.
Yeah. That was kind of what happened to the other self-employed families. He had a balloon coming up. He had to pay off the other one we were just talking about.
Yeah, and that particular one that we just closed together, the two siblings, you know, the daughter was living with dad, so that was her primary. Brother was not. She really wanted to keep the house. It had been her primary for a long time. And also, not only did they have this looming balloon payment, but they also had a lot of deferred maintenance, which is not uncommon when you inherit a home of an elderly person, that maybe they didn't have a lot of extra money to, you know, keep up with the roof and all that stuff. So that was a really fun one for us to do together, because they were so relieved. I mean, I got a message from the daughter, just so relieved. Her balloon payment was paid off. They got to remodel the kitchen, which needed a lot of work. Both siblings got to pay off all their credit card debt, their car loans. So it totally allowed them to use the equity in the home to kind of get a clean slate for both of them. And they were left with a standard 30-year fixed loan. They don't have to ever worry about a big, scary balloon payment again, at a monthly payment they can afford.
Right.
So that was just such a feel good.
That's a big thing. A monthly payment they can afford.
Yeah, exactly. Like they could literally afford to make that and not get themselves into trouble again, and keep the house, because they were so emotionally attached to this home.
Right. A lot of my clients were emotionally attached to receiving things. So that reminds me of the other one that we're working on right now, where it's a long held property from the trust. From dad died in 2010. They owned it probably before that, maybe even 2005 at least. And he had to buy out his sister. Now his sister was not part of the trust because she was the spouse of his brother, but his brother did not put her in the trust. And so she was not part of the benefits of that. But they had been paying her the monthly amount. They knew she was married to him and they wanted to keep help supporting her. But they had done a Hagstead petition, which is what we do when something gets left out of the trust. She wrote her name off of the property. This is another big tip. Please don't do this. You write your name off the property, put yourself right back on as soon as you can. Call me if you need help. Anyway, that is definitely. I've got 3 cases right now where that's a big mess. And the judges are like, hey, she's not on the title. And I'm like, yes, she is mentally she's on the title. But anyway, he's emotionally attached to that property. He really is. But paying off his sister, now he has a balloon payment. Now we were expecting that because he got involved in this property problem right around the pandemic. So everyone's been living there for 10 years. The pandemic hits, no one can afford rent. They all leave, and there he is with no rent. Luckily, he didn't have anyone sticking him with no rent. He didn't have any rent, so they left. So a lot of people were screwing over their landlords during the pandemic and not paying rent, even if they could. In that case, he didn't have that problem, but then he had to repair the property with someone who was living. He had someone live there to repair it, and the guy was doing whatever he wanted to do because no one wanted to work then. Remember that?
Yeah.
And then now the property's stabilized, but during that time period, he spent like every penny he had. And so then he had no money and he had to refinance, or he had to get a loan to pay off his sister right in the middle of that time period. So now we're going to refinance that loan. Things have changed a little bit. Maybe there will be some better rates going forward, but I don't think that's an issue because he had to pay a hard money loan to just get her out of his hair. Love her, but she was difficult. And she just wanted out. I think she wanted to retire, but I understand that. But, families who love each other could be still so mean to each other. And I try as a middle child, I'm really good at working with people like that because I've done it with my sister and brother for my entire life.
Yeah, you are so great at managing expectations. And I think just getting people to the table to come to an agreement, basically, because I've worked with other beneficiaries that you have not been involved with where they won't even speak. I mean, it's so sad. it's really tragic, and it can get very, very nasty. But I feel like whatever magic you're doing with your clients, Grace, you're able to gain everybody's trust because you are so frank, you're so straightforward, and they trust you. And when there's trust in the mediator, then people can come to terms, and that's what you bring to the table. And I think that's how people get themselves into trouble, is they think they can do this without an expert. And it's just really hard. Even when it is contentious, and let's face it, when money's involved, it becomes contentious really quickly, sadly, but it's true. You've earned everyone's trust so that with your advice and guidance, people are able to reach a reasonable agreement. And that's been my experience with all the clients that you have introduced me to, is everybody has a plan that they've agreed to, and now we're just trying to execute the plan.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. It's not easy to do, but like I said, I've been doing it my whole life, so it's right up my alley, I guess. But anyway, just wanted to thank you all for tuning in today. I really have enjoyed the experience of talking with Michelle. Again, Michelle's my go-to for mortgage brokers. And this is the first show that we're doing on our podcast, so I really appreciate it. I hope you guys come back and see us again. There'll be more people like Michelle to share all her tips and tricks, and also with me. So thanks for tuning in. Grace St. Clair, St. Clair Law, Quality Estate Planning, and Michelle Rogers, a CRM Mortgage. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Grace.
You've been tuning in to the Coffee with Counsel podcast with your host, Grace St. Clair. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, qualityestateplanning.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.